So, Steve, want to switch gears and talking about Thomas Fidone. He's a guy that we've all talked to, all been talking about. Number one tight end out there. We put him in the pass catcher sort of, category for us, which is why we bring him in here. At one point, when I first talked to Thomas Fidone down in San Antonio, I thought it was like an Iowa, Nebraska out front. At that point, an Iowa kid who grew up a Nebraska fan, who Michigan was in on at that point. And it was just a matter of could you pry him away from those closer to home schools? Now I get the feeling, I don't know about you, Steve and Bryce, but I get the feeling that this kid is a lot more wide open. That it's not like Iowa and Nebraska. Those are the two teams that have the market cornered and everyone else is trying to pry them away. I think the kids' antenna are up for some of the big time schools that aren't close to home now. As much as that helps Michigan, I also think it's the case that the competition is a lot stiffer when you consider schools like Bama in the mix now too.
100%. I mean, he's, kind of gone with the ebb and flow of this virus. Cause I think for a while, initially he wanted to keep it slow. Then, as this thing continued, I think he's thought about speeding it up a little. Now it kind of seems he may be back to keeping it a little bit slower. Again, this is all subject to change. But this is one, it's very reminiscent of, in my opinion, of their pursuit of Theo Johnson last cycle, where they have a guy in the class already that they're really, really high on. But they've been plugging along with Fidone forever. This feels like he's one of the first guys in this class that they really, really started to recruit really, really hard. And as a guy that, that's been the same thing now for months. If maybe more than any prospect on their board, the virus has hurt them in this recruitment, just because I think if he had gotten up to campus before the shutdown happened, I think there's a legitimate case that Michigan would be at the top or like maybe running. They really still could be running even at the top, maybe. But I think that they'd have made a huge, huge mark on he and his family if they got him to campus. So I think that's just really kind of the $1 million question is, when are they finally going to be able to get him up there? I don't think it's a deal where they would prefer him up there when the coaches aren't able to be there with him. I think there was some guy like, Tristan Bounds went and visited Michigan, sort of like an on his own type deal to see campus. I think with Fidone, I think they'd rather wait until it's able to be like a legit unofficial or official visit, and yeah, LSU is all in on him. He's their number one guy at tight end. Nebraska, who, if I had to guess, I would say is the toughest team for Michigan to beat here. He is listening to the other schools. I still feel like Nebraska, at the end of the day, I think they've, it's weird because I don't really know what they've done at tight end in the last 15 years. But he did that's even despite living in Iowa, I think he grew up as a Huskers fan. I think that's really where this stems from. The biggest thing hurting Michigan, in my opinion, is that they already have a guy. And I think that was maybe one of the big things that ended up hurting them with Theo Johnson last cycle, is they already had a commitment. I think it could be something similar here, although, Michigan travels 4 or 5 guys, and I think Fidone is a guy that would probably travel first year if he signed with the Wolverines. So, yeah, this is really this is a classic, just keep plugging away and get him up type recruitment. Because I think once they get him up there, I think I think his eyes will really be open